the Nutty Putty Cave. It was November 24th, 2009, 2 days before Thanksgiving. John Edward Jones, a 26-year-old medical student, John, his brother Josh, and 9 others headed into Nutty Putty Cave, an infamous but popular cave system about 55 miles from Salt Lake City. Nutty Putty wasn't enormous, but it was complex. Narrow passageways, low ceilings, twisting chutes with names like the Birth Canal and the Scout Eater. It was the kind of cave you didn't enter without a map and experience. Around 8 p.m., deep inside the limestone system, John saw a narrow crevice and decided to explore. He believed he was entering a passage called the Birth Canal, a tight but navigable section. So he pushed in head first, crawling, sliding, squeezing through rock with his arms in front and his body pressed tight on all sides. And then he realized he had made a fatal mistake. A dead end, just 10 inches wide and sloping downward. He kept going, unsure but confident, until he could no longer move forward. He tried to back out, but the slope was too steep. The walls too tight. He tried to wiggle, nothing. He tried to scream, only echoes answered. John was now 400 feet into the cave system and 100 feet below ground, upside down, trapped. With his arms pinned and his body bent in a crushing L shape, head angled below his heart. He was 6 feet tall. The hole was barely 10 inches wide. Josh Jones, who had been nearby, heard John's panicked voice and rushed to help. But even he couldn't see John's feet. The crevice was too deep, too sharp. There was no way to reach in and pull him out. Josh backed out and sprinted to the surface. 9 p.m., the call went out to Utah County Search and Rescue. Soon, over 100 rescuers swarmed the site. Volunteers, police, firefighters, and cave experts. They brought ropes, pulleys, radios, drills, anything they thought could work. Time was already against them. In that vertical position, blood pools in the brain. Organs start shutting down. Lungs collapse under pressure. Most humans can't survive more than 8 to 10 hours upside down. But he was still alive, still conscious, still talking. Crews rigged a rope and pulley system anchored to the cave walls. They tried to loop the rope around John's legs and slowly pull him out. At one point, they succeeded in moving him several feet up. He was almost out, but then a sudden, sickening snap. A carabiner broke loose from the wall. The entire system collapsed. John slid violently back into the crevice, deeper than before. His legs twisted behind him. His body was now wedged tighter than ever. He groaned in agony. The rescuers, shocked, exhausted, and increasingly desperate, regrouped. They drilled holes into the limestone, trying to create new anchors. Others tried to widen the crevice with air-powered tools. One rescuer crawled in to give John food and water. Time ticked on. John's breathing grew shallow. His heart struggled to pump blood against the angle. Around midnight on November 25th, more than 24 hours after John got stuck, rescuers lost contact with him. He had stopped responding. A medic crawled in and checked. There was no pulse. Officials made a heartbreaking decision. Nutty Putty Cave was permanently sealed. A plaque was later placed outside the cave in his memory. The dual deaths of Jacob's Well. It was September 9, 1979, when 2 young divers, Richard Patton and Mark D. Griffin, both in their early 20s, arrived at Jacob's Well. Both men were college students, trained divers, and part of a local diving club. They knew the reputation of the cave. They had studied the maps. They knew the layout. Their plan? Explore Chambers 1 and 2, maybe venture into Chamber 3 if conditions allowed. The 2 suited up and entered the well in the afternoon. Chamber 1? Checked. Chamber 2? They made it. Chamber 3? That's where things took a turn. It begins with a tight, winding passage just wide enough for a diver with gear. Then it opens into a larger space, filled with jagged rocks, loose gravel, and visibility that vanishes with a single misplaced fin. Patton and Griffin had flashlights, tanks, experience. But deep inside this third chamber, something happened. Maybe they lost the guideline. Maybe one kicked up silt and blinded the other. Or maybe they followed a false crevice thinking it was the way out. What is certain is this: they both removed their tanks. Not in panic, not in haste, but calmly, as if they believed, somehow, that they had to remove their gear to escape. They never came back. When the men failed to surface, emergency calls went out. Rescue divers were dispatched, including some of the most experienced cave specialists in Texas. Rescue divers entered the system with extreme caution. Chamber 1, then Chamber 2, then the treacherous crawl to Chamber 3. And that's where they found them. The two bodies were discovered lying on the gravel floor of Chamber 3. Both had removed their tanks. One was still wearing his mask, regulator still in his mouth, air still in the tank. No signs of violent struggle. No panic scratches on the walls. But no one really knows. Even veteran divers couldn't explain it. What disturbed them most was the calm. The bodies were successfully recovered and brought to the surface. Wielka Sniezna Cave. On August 15, 2019, a team of 6 experienced cavers entered Wielka Sniezna Cave, nestled in the Tatra Mountains of southern Poland. The cave is infamous, over 23 kilometers of mapped tunnels, plunging to depths of 824 meters, 2,700 feet. It's dark, wet, and punishingly cold, with subterranean rivers and sharp limestone drops. This was not a casual hike. It was a technical descent requiring ropes, helmets, wetsuits, and intense preparation. The group's goal: explore deeper sections of the cave's lesser-known corridors. They moved in teams, splitting to cover more ground. But 2 of them, young, experienced men in their 20s and 30s, went farther into a tight, flooded section than planned. Somewhere around 500 meters underground, the 2 men descended into a low passage partially filled with water, known to flood occasionally but still considered passable. But that day, water levels rose fast. A sudden surge, likely caused by melting snow or an unseen subterranean shift, trapped the men inside a tight, flooded crawl space. They were sealed in a pocket, cut off by a wall of freezing water. The cave became a tomb of shifting currents and black rock. No one knew exactly where they were. No one could hear them scream. When the pair didn't return to base camp, the others knew something was wrong. They made the difficult trek back to the surface and alerted authorities. Immediately, TOPR, Tatra Volunteer Search and Rescue, was called in, one of Poland's most elite mountain rescue teams. Within hours, over 30 rescuers, including divers, medics, and cave experts, mobilized for one of the most complex operations in Polish history. Rescuers had to drill through rock, pump out freezing water, and navigate extremely narrow vertical shafts that barely allowed one body through at a time. They couldn't speak to the trapped men. They couldn't even confirm if they were alive. Temperatures hovered just above freezing. Visibility was near zero. Equipment kept failing due to the humidity and cold. Rockfalls slowed progress. Day and night they drilled, swam, climbed, desperate to reach the void where the men might still be breathing. At one point, divers found a narrow air pocket and hoped it might be where the men had found shelter. They knocked, they waited. No answer. After nearly 7 days underground, rescue teams finally reached the chamber where they believed the cavers had become trapped. There, in a narrow, cold crevice filled with stagnant water, they found what they feared most: the bodies of both men. They had died days earlier, likely from hypothermia, drowning, or asphyxiation, trapped in a space with no air, no light, no way out. The mission had turned from rescue to recovery, and even that was nearly impossible. Their names were withheld initially out of respect for the families. In the aftermath, Polish authorities increased regulations around deep cave exploration and stressed the unpredictable danger of Wielka Sniezna. The cave remains open, but its scars run deep. Eagle's Nest Sinkhole. It was Christmas Day 2010. 2 experienced divers, Darren Spivey, 35, and his 15-year-old son, Dylan Sanchez, arrived at Eagle's Nest Sinkhole in Florida's Chassahowitzka Wildlife Management Area. The 2 descended into the main shaft just after noon. The main shaft of Eagle's Nest drops quickly, more than 80 feet straight down, before branching into a series of twisting, narrow tunnels. These passages can disorient even the best trained divers. It's dark, cold, claustrophobic. Darren and Dylan were using recreational diving gear, not the full tech setups required for deep cave dives. Dylan, at just 15, didn't have formal cave diving certification. As they descended deeper, nitrogen narcosis, oxygen toxicity, and CO2 buildup would have started affecting their minds. One wrong turn, one kicked up cloud of silt, one miscalculation of air, and you're not finding your way back. At some point, the walls of the cave closed in, and father and son went silent. Hours passed. Family members waiting on land grew worried. There was no sign of bubbles, no surfacing. By evening, emergency services were called. The cave was too deep to send in untrained search teams. Only expert recovery divers could handle this. But those divers knew, once you lose orientation in Eagle's Nest, survival is almost impossible. Divers descended the shaft and reached 100 feet, then 200, carefully following known guidelines into the heart of the cave system. Then, near the 235-foot mark, they spotted two bodies, still in gear, motionless. Darren Spivey and Dylan Sanchez had died together in the darkness. Their tanks were empty. Their bodies lay eerily close, as if trying to find a way out, but too far gone to make it. Recovery took time. The depths were dangerous, currents strong, visibility poor. In 1999, 2 divers died in the same spot. Others had vanished deeper inside. Over a dozen deaths have occurred in or near the system.